Working for you this morning, so in between we will be linking up with our reporters concerning those issues they're following up for us. But in studio, we want to kickstart our conversation right away and talking about what next for the BBI initiative. And this is coming a day after the Super Tuesday. I've just taken you through the list of counties that endorsed the bill. In studio to help me unpack this matter is sitting at the far left, Peter Njage. He's a lawyer. He's going to give us some legal perspective on this particular subject. Thank you so much, Peter, for creating time for us this morning.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we have Martin Andati, a political analyst. Always a pleasure to have you, Martin. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Serfine.
All right. So yesterday there was the Super Tuesday. I want to start by getting your quick comments on whether the support the bill got across the counties came to you as a surprise or it was something that you had anticipated. Let me begin with you, Martin.
It was not a surprise. And, you know, Super Tuesday is borrowed from the US. Mm-hmm. When they have the primaries, there's a time you have a number of states voting to determine who becomes the candidate. So basically, we borrowed that phrase from the Americans. But looking at the kind of lobbying that has gone into it, both overt and covert, it was not a surprise because you saw the president go to Mount Kenya and spent 4 days actually in Mount Kenya, trying to reach out to the leadership, including the MCAs, to try and show up support. Because there had been perception out there that the bill was very unpopular in Mount Kenya. So the president personally took initiative and engaged very robustly with MCS, of course with goodies. Mm-hmm. You know, the president is still powerful and he controls the purse. We have the constitutional commissions, but the president has a very big say in how some of those things are done. So you saw him, the MCS have had issues with asking for the car grants, and he acceded to that demand. Mm-hmm. Two, the MCS are getting the ward funds. So, I mean, it will not, it doesn't make sense for you to reject a bill which, because in some of the counties, the governors have refused to give MCS the ward fund. So, and that is a political tool. Just like the MPs have CDF, the MPs also want a fund which they can oversee, mm-hmm. and which will give them some latitude to be able to do a few things in their own areas away from the supervision of the governors. So there is no way most of those MCS were going to reject the bill. Mm-hmm. And you can see then the numbers have already been met. So it's a question of do we get the others to complete the process? Or,
yeah, I was about to probe you gentlemen on that, but we'll come to that later. I also want to get your views about this, Peter. 38 counties, I mean, is this something that caught you by surprise or is something that you had anticipated?
Thank you, Serfine. I think the countries just did whatever they expected to do within the perimeters of the law, because after the verification of the IBC of the required 1 million signatures as per the Constitution, Article 257, then the next conveyor belt is the IBC, is that the same is referred to the counties. So essentially they're just whatever is natural for them to conduct their constitutional mandate. Mm-hmm. In terms of the outcome, based as my colleague here has mentioned, there was a concerted effort to ensure that the bill sails through, and it is only natural that you'd expect, based on the political scenario on the environment of the day, that it would have a sway and would have actually be on the positive, mm-hmm. in terms of the affirmation that we witnessed yesterday. Mm-hmm. So it was not a surprise to me.
All right. Martin, is there any specific county that probably stood out for you in the manner in which they voted? In the list of counties that voted yes for this particular bill, considering the opposing voices that have been there and talks about, you know, this bill not being popular in certain areas, is there anything that stood out for you? Even looking at Baringo voting no, is there anything about that list that is, you can term as a highlight or something different?
Well, Nakuru, if what we were, the information that was coming in was true, the voting was along tribal lines. So there was basically, you know, most of the MCS, they are from the Kikuyu Nation and the Kalenjin Nation. So you could clearly see the divide, the tribal divide, which is very unfortunate. Then you have Bomet, which is supposedly one of the strongholds of the DP. And you know, the DP has been, he is not coming out. He's actually become the new watermelon in town. He's not coming out to say he's opposing, and he's not coming out to say he's supporting. So, but he's been sending mixed signals. So there was an expectation that Bomet, because Bomet is one of his perceived strongholds, so it was expected maybe they will go the Baringo route. But you see, I watched a bit of the discussion in Bomet on your TV here, and the MCS said they are supporting the bill because they are bound to benefit from it. So, and you know, the MCS are not just robots. They also know that if the bill is good and it's going to make their governance easier, you don't use it to settle political scores. You know, part of the reason you saw the 2010 referendum, William Ruto used that to consolidate the Kalenjin nation. So he didn't oppose the constitution per se because he believed it was not good. But he was using it to send out a political message. But you know, right now he's in government. He is the deputy president. And Raila would have really relished William Ruto being on the north side so that they humiliate him as they build momentum for 2022. But I think he has realized, and you know, running a referendum against government would be very foolhardy for him, because that would basically mean they use that to force him out of government, because they have packaged BBI as one of the government agendas. So if he goes against it, then his continued stay in government will be untenable. Two, it's expensive. You know, it's basically an election. And you saw how the president and his team and his brother Raila put in resources and effort. Because you see, like in Western, you saw they dispatched the NC party leader Musalia, they dispatched Wetangula, they dispatched Eugene, they dispatched Atuoli. So all those fellas were mobilized to go and work on the Western numbers and Governor Paranya and all the government Western region. Then Raila took control of certain regions. Then you had, he reached out to the rest of the fellas. The president also talked to the people who have serious clout. And of course, you know, that lobbying comes with the money. So if Ruto were to try and reach out to those MCAs, it would mean he puts in the same amount of money and effort or more. And you see, he doesn't have that kind of, even if he has money, he cannot spend the kind of, he cannot outspend the government. Because you see, these are government projects, so it's being funded from government coffers. So, and we have an election next year. So he must be strategic in how he spends his resources.
Still staying with you, Martin, I'm looking at Murang'a, where Irungu Kangata is coming from. I'm looking at Kirinyaga, where a powerful politician, Martha Karua, is coming from. She's actually shepherding the Linda Katiba initiative. I mean, does it send any message, them having voted, you know, in the opposite direction?
Karua doesn't have the kind of resources that would go against the resources that will be spent by government. You remember Karanja Kibicho, the PS Interior, comes from Kirinyaga. He's one of the key handlers of the president. You have Governor Waiguru, who has been very active in the BBI movement, coming from Kirinyaga. So she will do whatever it takes so that she doesn't embarrass the president, and also try to secure her political future. So Karua, you know, Karua is working with civil society, but they don't have, they have not put in the kind of resources that would be able to swing the MCS. I don't even think they have had any serious engagement with the MCS. Then they went out there, addressed a press conference, took a cup of tea, made certain statements, and that was it. So the lobbying, you know, you need, in fact, if you asked me, I think Dr. Okot did better lobbying with his Punguza Mzigo than, better than
Linda Katiba.
That Linda Katiba has done. At least he was going out there. And, you know, the county assemblies allowed him to even present in the assemblies. I have not seen any clip anywhere where the Linda Katiba has had an engagement in the assemblies. So apart from the press conference and talking in Fungamano, they have not done much. You saw in Ukambani, Governor Kibwana and Governor Mutua. You know, they were initially not very comfortable. In fact, Kibwana was part of that Linda Katiba. But when he met Raila, I think that must have also contributed. Because you remember he met Raila and Kitui and Orengo. So I think Raila must have talked to him to try and change his mind. But he also realized that the mood was, he was against him. So being the clever politician that he is, he says, look, I cannot go against what the majority have said. Right. So, and even Mutua. You remember Mutua had used some of those MCAs to try and say that he was not given the recognition that he needs. But when he realized that going against it, they would have goofed because Kalonzo was now going to run with it. And it was going to mess them up. Then they had to make an about turn very fast.
All right, but it seems like there's a lot, you know, that we need to really look at when we are talking about this issue on BBI. But I'll come back to you later. I just want to understand. There's something you raised, and Peter probably can help us understand this. According to Article 257, after IEBC has verified at least 1 million signatures of registered voters, then the bill is given the green light to be debated across the counties. Counties have, I believe, up to 3 months to do this. So far, it is not even 1 month since IEBC did this. It was on January 26th, if I'm not wrong. It is not even 1 month. Already 38 counties have given the bill the green light. So does it mean that it moves to the next step, or we wait for the other counties to also vote, which could take 3 months as the Constitution provides?
Thank you so much, Serfine. Maybe for the purpose of our viewers, it's good we understand the sequence on how we can amend the Constitution, or the genesis and the process, where we are and where we envisage to be. And that question is answered, that you've put before us, is answered in Article 257 of the Constitution. And there are 2 ways to amend the Constitution. One is that you can present a draft bill. The other alternative is that it can be through a popular vote, such that people can conglomerate and think they want to change. But if it's a popular vote, then it's reduced into writing in the form of a bill. After that, you present the signatures, which should be at least 1 million signatures, to the IEBC. And the IEBC, if it satisfies itself that the signatures are authentic, they are from registered voters, then it now proceeds to the next phase, which now the IEBC now presents the question for the amendment of the Constitution to the respective county assemblies, which we know now as the Constitutional Amendment Bill 2020. Upon presentation to the respective speakers of the county assemblies, they have a timeline, which is 3 months, within which they should debate the bill. To answer your question, the 3 months is the maximum period. But if they are ambitious enough, or they're effective as much, they can as well debate it much sooner than that. Upon the speakers of the county assemblies receiving that bill from the chair of the IEBC, he presents the same question to the county assemblies, who are now the MCAs, to debate the question that is presented before them. After that, it can be a yes or a no, depending on the voting patterns of the respective counties. The test that is required is a simple majority of the 47 counties, which is now 47 divided by 2, which comes to 24 counties.
Yeah, 24 counties.
So as we stand now, based on the vote yesterday, we are safe to say that the threshold has been satisfied, because now you're looking at 38 counties. So the ones that we may vote otherwise, I don't think they have any legal effect in terms of the next phase. So that now what should happen at this stage, since the 38 have made their determination and they have made their decision, the respective county assembly speakers ought to issue what you call a certificate to the Speaker of the National Assembly and the Speaker of the Senate, informing them of the respective decisions of their counties. So that now, after the Speakers of the National Assembly and the Senate is presented with that particular instrument, then you also present the same question now to the respective parliaments.
The Senate and the National Assembly?
Yes, both houses, because it's a big question to change our constitution. And we know that constitution is the supreme law of the land. So that's why the tests are there, to safeguard the integrity and the supremacy of the constitution. So the respective county speakers, after that question, they also have an equal pattern of 3 months within which they should put the question before the members of the respective houses. And there are 2 outcomes that may happen. One is that the National Assembly may vote yes or no, and there are envisaged solutions to those effects. In a similar fashion, the Senate may vote yes or no. The test that's required is a simple majority of both houses, so that if the simple majority is satisfied that they are okay with what was presented from the county assemblies, then now the respective speakers of the county assembly, National Assembly and Senate, then they also issue another certificate to the president, and now president, because the amendment that maybe the listener should understand is an amendment that is changing the sphere of governorship in this country. It is changing the executive in terms of how it's operated because of the introduction of issues to do like with the Prime Minister. It is changing the governance structure of the devolved government and Senate. Article 97 will have been having now 98 senators, so that now this amendment has to be put to a question in a referendum within Article 255 of the Constitution, so that now after these 2 speakers now, they present that certificate to the president, then the president now gives the same and presents the same for a referendum.
Before you continue, so does it mean that as it stands, it's not affirmed or it's not sure that it's clear we are going to a referendum? It depends on the decision by the National Assembly and the Senate. I just want to get that clear.
No, it is automatic.
It is automatic?
Yeah. You know, irrespective of whether the 2 houses vote yes or no. Once, you know, the challenge is at the county assemblies. If the county assemblies, if 24 county assemblies rejected the bill yesterday, then it will not proceed to the referendum. It would have actually collapsed. And you remember that is what happened with Punguza Mzigo. So, but the moment it passes the assemblies, then it goes to the 2 houses, and it's automatic. Whether they vote yes or no, it will still proceed to the referendum. You know, there are what he is talking about, what Okil is talking about. There are articles which are protected in the Constitution, which you cannot amend in Senate, and which you cannot amend in Parliament.
It has to go.
So it must go to the popular initiative, to the Wananchi. And you know, there are clauses which they will amend. You know, like allowing. You know, initially we had members of cabinet assembly, cabinet secretaries, being technocrats. Now, one of the proposals is that you will have members of parliament being ministers. They're actually now not being called cabinet secretaries; they are being called cabinet ministers. So that will be effected in parliament. So, you know, those are clauses you just amend. Once they go to parliament, then parliament passes and Senate passes certain amendments, then they will go to the president, and he assents to those bills. Then to the bill, and those ones automatically they are done. Okay. Now, the ones which are protected by the Constitution, the ones he's talking about, even the members, you know, our MPs, we had fixed it in parliament. But now we are expanding. So the number of senators, the number of members of parliament. So that one now has to go to the popular initiative, which is a referendum. So once the MPs and the senators are done with their bit, it goes to the president. He accents to the ones which would have been passed. Then the other ones go to the IEBC to reframe a referendum question. And it is now on that referendum question that we will vote yes or no. But there are portions of the BBI bill which would have already been actualized if they have been passed by parliament, by the two chambers of parliament.
All right. Yeah. Gentlemen, you've really simplified that process for us to understand how it goes. I also want to know, you know, you didn't come out very clearly on the question I asked you on whether it has to wait for all the counties to vote or it can move to the next level at this stage. Many people are a bit concerned about that.
The question that we should be looking at is whether the threshold has been met.
That is what is fundamental.
That's what is fundamental, because each county has its own duration and its own timelines within which to debate that question. The issue that we should be addressing is whether these counties that have voted in the affirmative, how soon they'll present their certificate to the respective speakers, so that if the speakers of both houses are satisfied that the threshold has been met, in spite of the others not maybe conducting that question or giving a contrary decision, it still suffices to say that the test has been met. So that
and they are not obligated to do so, like a county can opt not to debate the bill?
Of course, that would border also on failure for purposes of the question that is before us, failure to conduct their statutory duties and mandate, because it's part of their duty. So we don't foresee a scenario whereby no county would definitely shoulder it, because we expect them to legislate and debate it, because that's part of their duty. But in terms of the test and the number, because it's a question of numerical question, it has been satisfied as of yesterday. So that it now depends how soon or how fast the speakers of those particular counties will furnish the said certificate and the decision of the respective county assemblies to the speakers now of the upper houses, which is the Senate, and the Speaker of the other house, which is the National Assembly.
All right. Martin, earlier when I asked you about counties that are standing out, counties that probably there was something unique about their voting pattern, and mentioned counties like Kirinyaga, I heard you talk about MCAs a lot, and MCAs, there are people you can influence, there are people you can talk to. We had several counties talking about they voted after a public participation process. Where does this fall in this conversation? Does it mean that the MCAs had the upper hand in this, or it's members of the public who actually had an upper hand in the voting patterns? From where you sit, from your judgment?
You know, when the IEBC sent the bill to the county assemblies, there is an obligation. You know, the Constitution now talks about public participation. So when the bill was sent to the speakers, then they put a public notice out there, and they set up public hearings. So it is, you know, the MCAs are representatives of the people, but the Constitution, they have donated power. So the Constitution obligates them to go and consult, and the forums in which you consult are the public participation forums. So they called for meetings in the grassroots, and the people there give their views. So it is on the basis of the views that the people give that now you decide to vote. Of course, you saw one of the MCAs in Bomet saying that the people in his ward told him in public participation that they are not supporting the bill. So he voted against. That is what he said. So we don't know, because we didn't see the public participation forum.
Did you see any of this? Did you attend or see any of this public participation?
They put notices in the newspaper.
Critics of this initiative are actually questioning this public participation process. Where did it take place? Who was involved?
They put out notices there. So, you know, if you have issues, you can either do a memorandum, or you can also go to those forums and air your views. But, you know, the timeline, some of the assemblies, the timeline, have they really done that effective public participation?
Yes, that's
you know, the intention of public participation was you educate the people so that they know what exactly they are contributing about. But some of the masses don't even know. Because, and I hope the chairman of the secretariat, my friend Dennis, and Honorable Unit, they need to invest more money in terms of, they need to get some money to be able to educate the people, especially through the vernacular stations, especially here. You know, you guys have very serious. You actually have almost every community is a FM station.
Yes.
So they need to spend a bit of the money and get people to come in and explain what exactly the amendments that the implications and what amendments are proposed. I don't think that has been very effectively done. The same thing even in 2005, we had a similar problem. There was not that robust civic education. The same thing in 2010. We didn't have as much civic education as the masses should have had. So that you explain to the people some of the proposals and how they are going to affect the people. So that by the time the people go and vote, in the referendum, they already know what they are voting for or against. Rather than, you know, what you've had is the BBI, the reggae rallies, you know. You have a big rally, and then you have the big boys coming there, then singing and saying nobody can stop reggae. Then people make all sorts of statements. So, and I mean, in those big rallies, the masses don't talk. So it is the politicians, especially the ones who are senior at the national level, who have the opportunity to speak for maybe, and because of the cameras, when politicians see cameras, they become crazy. So because of the cameras, you have all sorts of things being talked about. Yeah. So you don't get the real message going out there. So I hope and believe that this time the approach will be a bit different. They have said they are starting rallies again on 1st of next month. But why don't they spend a bit of money and get people who understand the issues to come and explain to people in Kiswahili, to explain to the masses who don't understand Kiswahili in a language they understand in those vernacular stations. So that, because BBI, the proposals are meant to make the life of the people better. And if it's the people you are governing, why don't you explain to them in a way that they understand why you are proposing certain things to be done? And that way, it will be very easy. They will not spend so much money and time running around doing some of the things they are doing.
Let me also get Peter's comments on this issue of public participation. The law provides for it, but have we explored it? Ideally speaking, in a process as crucial as amending the Constitution, how should this process of public participation be conducted? Who should be doing it, and what is it that should shape the conversation that is taking place in these forums?
Thank you, Serfine. The issue of public participation is a big question which has actually been even put before the courts to determine what amounts of public participation.
We're even getting to a point you're asking who is the public.
And who is the public, and the number we should be looking at in terms of the public and how to conduct those forums. Do you conduct it through maybe technology and put a questionnaire? Should it be put through barazas? And those are issues that are raised every time, even in tribunals, which determine, like even tendering process, those questions arise. So how about a constitutional issue? So you can see it's a very big issue in terms of public participation. But the issue that is for the constitutional amendment, the issue of public participation seems to be canvassed through the county assemblies. Because if you look in terms of the hierarchy of the structure on how to amend the Constitution, you see that the county assemblies have been given so much weight so that, in effect, the outcome of the respective county assemblies has a lot of impetus in terms of how the Constitutional Amendment Bill 2020 is going to be determined. Because you look at, there are usually 4 spheres, if I can determine them into 4 categories in terms of how it should be looked at, which we have discussed before. You look at the issue of signatures, 1 million, that one has been satisfied. So that one has been done. The second sphere is the county assemblies. But
even that issue of signature is also contentious. Because when you register as a voter, you don't sign. So when they are verifying signatures, they verify against what?
Using against?
Because you don't have a sample signature. If I'm verifying your signature, then I need to have a sample. But in the voter registration process, you don't sign. So how do you verify a signature? You are verifying it against what?
The verification happens in the context of that the registered voters have been presenting that question and they associate with it. So there is nothing to, it's not a question of counter-checking, but it's a question of confirmation. However, for purposes...
Was it Machozi Mondays, or was it during that time when NASA was actually wanted the IEBC out of, and there was that issue of signatures, and there were actually some people saying that there are signatures that are crazy, like you would find somebody drawing an animal. How do you, contest? If that is my signature, how do you say it's not, that it's not supposed to be an animal? That's how I sign. That's how some would argue.
Fair enough. In terms of signatures, it's a question of identity or whether that person actually exists. And those are issues that within the domain of IBC. But in terms of the legal aspect, we are safe to say, because for the question to be put before the county assemblies, so we should be safe to say that the signatures issues had been solved and canvassed because it didn't arise. Otherwise, if it arose, it could have gone to the next phase. The next phase, which my colleague has said has no weight, which is the county, the Senate and the National Assembly. Because the question that is going to be before us now is a fundamental question in terms of the substance of the Constitution, which we had mentioned before. So that in terms of now the referendum, because that thing has to go through a referendum, because there are 2 possible outcomes, Serfine, when this matter goes to the county, to the National Assembly and the Senate. They can say yes or no. But I used to associate myself with Martin's sentiments that whether it's a yes or no, it has no force of law, because the issues that are before the bill are fundamental issues which are enshrined in Article 255, which are going to the core substance of the Constitution, like devolved government, issues of structure of the executive, issues about the ombudsman. Those are additions in the judiciary, and most importantly about the supremacy of the Constitution. And now when the question comes to the referendum, you look the test or the threshold that is there. The Constitution says simply 20% of the registered voters in at least half of the counties, or a simple majority of the people who are going to cast their votes. So that my thinking would be, if you're able to attain the threshold through the county assemblies, which was attained yesterday, we are safe to say that this bill is home and dry.
For real? Martin?
They will marshal the numbers, and
it's a done deal.
There is still who are the promoters? The president.
So where does this leave those who are opposing the BBI initiative? What will they be doing in the next?
They have to go out there and try and rally support. But you know, rallying support, the way Kenyans know our politics, it is a campaign, and campaign time people need to eat. So those who are against, do they have the resources to go out there? And even traction, look at even the kind of publicity they get. When they get, they call a press conference. How much airtime is it given on primetime news? So you see, the fellas who are promoting this process are political heavyweights. They own parties. They have, Raila has a number of MPs, he has MCAs, he has governors. So he has, he can raise resources. The same with President Uhuru. So, and then you have Kalonzo, you have Musalia, you have Wetangula. So they have all been roped in. And you've seen even in Bomas, when they do their meetings, he makes sure that each and every one of those key party leaders is present, so that they also reach out to their constituencies. So the other ones who are opposing, how much money are they going to put in?
So it's a money factor.
Yeah, money is a major factor, because it's a political process. You know, this entire thing, the constitutional amendment process, ultimately it is legal, but it is also political, because the people who are driving it are politicians, and they want to achieve certain interests. So because one of the main issues is having an expanded executive. Two, they want, in the process of expanding the executive, you are reducing the presidential powers a bit, and creating a structure where you have a big table on the executive. Whether some of those positions will have as much powers is neither here nor there. But you know, in terms of the political class, you have enough posts to go around. So that gives them room to form a very big coalition. And with that coalition, it becomes even very easy for them to seek political power. So they are looking at all those dynamics. So they are the legal issues. They are using the political process to fix legal issues. So they're the ones who are out there who are against, and they don't have much in terms of resources. Then you have very little impact, because you will not get as much. You can't call a rally, because calling for a rally and mobilizing costs money. You can't get as much in terms of media coverage, because that also costs resources. So it becomes a challenge, and that's why the no team needed somebody who has a bit of resources, political money, and a political muscle. But you see, the expectation was the DP will do it, but the DP has chickened out. He's not ready to burn his money on that referendum.
But he has not said he's not supporting.
He is neither supporting nor... I told you, when we opened Serfine, I said he's the new watermelon in town.
Really? Anyway, you know, so gentlemen, what should guide the next phase? Because right now, the proponents of the initiative have said they are going to engage in yet another tour of meeting the people and popularizing the BBI initiative. We saw this, BBI has been around for a very long time. We had BBI 1, we had BBI phase 2, we had the validation hearings. There's been constant talk about BBI and engaging the public. Right now at the county assemblies, there was talk of public participation. What should be different about this next phase for it to add value in the journey of changing Kenya's constitution? What should be done differently based on what you've witnessed, even how the politicians have been spreading this gospel, how the language they've used, how they've tried to popularize this initiative? What should be different this particular round?
Thank you, Serfine. The question about popularizing should also be read in the context of the timelines, because the Constitution provides for timelines within which this whole exercise should come to a close. If you look at when this question for the Constitutional Amendment Bill 2020 was presented to the respective county assemblies, it should have been around, was it January 26th? Mm-hmm. So if it was January 26th and the Constitution provides for a timeline of 3 months within which to discuss and debate that particular question, it pushes you to sometime in April 26th, within which they had the latitude of time to debate on it. But you can clearly see, hardly even before the month is over, the question has been answered, and the answer is a resounding yes from those particular counties that debated on it. So that this question may be put for a referendum way before the envisaged 3 months period that each organ of government is provided and authorized to debate. So that the issue of public participation will have to be understood when the president now puts that question for referendum. And how I was saying that the answer is as good as a done deal is because the test that is provided for in Article 255 is a very small threshold compared, like even an election, a presidential election, which provides for 50+1. Here you're talking about 20% of at least half of the counties, or a simple majority of the citizens voting in the referendum, so that you can clearly see that the issue of the ability of it to sway through is very high based on the past precedents and the past conduct and the past history of electoral processes in this country. But had it failed at the county assemblies, then you could see it was actually, it would have been dead on arrival. But now that he has satisfied that test, the issue of public participation will be more or less like rubber stamping whatever has been passed because of the threshold that has been there. So those are the issues that maybe our viewers could be thinking through, but it's also important for the drivers or the proponents or the knowers who are pushing it to actually ensure that public participation is done, so that by the time the citizens are being put that question before them, they are knowledgeable and they are aware of what they are actually going to execute. Yeah,
Martin, I know you touched on that a bit earlier, but there's been concern about politics overshadowing the process, like sort of we may miss the point if we just politicize this whole process. Also, you know, just to engage you on the same question, if you were to give advice, how should we take advantage of the next phase as a country so that when it comes to the time when wananchi are expected to vote on this particular bill, they know what they are doing and they actually make informed decisions? How should we take advantage of this?
The way I said it would have made more sense if they spend more in terms of resources, in terms of conducting education. But you know, these are politicians, and they want to score political points. You know, and you know, the sad bit about political rally, you don't have control over what people say. You know, once people go into a BBI rally, it is very difficult for you to, because you know, you don't put them in a classroom and tell them, you know, you will say this, so and so. So it's not controlled. So people go out there and they will say all sorts of stuff, you know. Some will be there insulting the DP, some will be there settling their own local political wars, some will be there now wanting to be seen near the president, some will be trying to move near Baba so that they say their Baba as a favored candidate in the coming elections. So all those shenanigans. But you know, you already see, because of the fallout in NASA, there is some slight disagreement. They are not going to do joint rallies. You saw ANC said they will do their own BBI rallies. ODM is going to do their own BBI rallies. Then you have the president and his team So they are now not going because, and you know, the initial thinking was Raila will be able to get all these guys on board. Then they all speak, then he speaks last. So he hoists himself at the top. Unfortunately, because the political dynamics have also come in and they have changed. The guys
so
are...
in one way or the other, this is closely tied to 2022 general elections.
Yeah, it has a big bearing on 2022. Because, you know, once you change the structure of government, some of the people who wanted to vie for governor, they were looking at the money. But now that they know some of the moment the bill goes through, then MPs become ministers. Then some of the guys don't now need to go and become governors. You realize you can vie in a small place, become an MP, and negotiate to become a prime minister or become a deputy prime minister or become a minister, which is more powerful than even some of those governors. So that changes the dynamics completely. So the people now are going to position themselves depending on interests. Two, it also makes it easier for coalition forming because you see, after the NASA fallout, after they lost the elections in 2017 and the mock swearing in, Raila duped them because that's the truth. He promised them that he will not run, but all indicators are that he wants to run. So he cannot now go back to them and cheat them that, look, you guys support me again in 2022, then I'll not run in 2022. So they had to look for something.
He's also another person who has not outrightly said.
He is not outrightly said, but you know, the actions speak louder than the words. Yeah. So you see, you need now to have something concrete that you can use to lure your partners, which I think is good for the country. Because, you know, the presidents which we are having now, the Ferrari, where you have the president and the DP, is a bit constrained, especially in a country where you have too many communities. And each of those tribal chieftains wants to have something which they take to the community and tell them, look, we are also on the table. So you have enough slots now. You will tell some, you will be prime minister, you will be deputy. This one will be the other deputy. The other one will be speaker. You know, that kind of arrangement. Whether there will be real power in those positions or not, it's neither here nor there.
So,
but they will have at least...
You feel by expanding the executive, we can actually, you know, sort of achieve a leadership style that is inclusive?
In terms of perception, yes.
Why do you use the phrase perception?
You know, you cannot be sure whether some of those positions will have real power. Because you see, the kind of prime minister you are having now is not anywhere close to even what we had in the Grand Coalition government. You see, the Grand Coalition government was even anchored in law. And of course, the initial arrangement, which Wako watered down, was better. And you know, the prime minister then was more powerful. But after they went back and Wako consulted his client, they played some mischief with the Orengo and watered down the powers that Raila would have had. So this one, you know, he can be fired, he can be appointed and sacked by the president. So it's not that powerful, you know. And he is basically the supervisor of the members of parliament. You know, what they were initially looking at was an executive prime minister, but you know, that will cause problems. So what we have now, what they are proposing, is more like what we have in Uganda and what we have in Tanzania. Where you don't, you know, in Tanzania, if you ask anybody, I'm sure you don't even know who the Prime Minister of Tanzania is. So, but you see, he's some senior minister who is above the other ministers with some semblance of power.
So it's not even about the positions, it's about how much power each position comes with.
Yeah, they'll have some power so that you appease those communities so that they don't feel left out.
Will we ever come out of this cycle, Peter? From your perspective, we're talking about tribes, you're talking about creating positions to sort of come up with a formula that will be inclusive, but still questioning the amount of power each position will come with. I mean, do we perhaps need to redefine national positions for us to go beyond tribe, for us to really have somebody, doesn't matter which religion, which tribe you come from, but you represent the whole nation by the fact that you hold a national office, or I'm becoming too ambitious?
Thank you. You're not ambitious because dreams are valid.
Yeah, just had to ask that because we always have this culture of I have to see somebody there that I know or I can associate with for me to feel like I can benefit from the national cake. I mean, can we ever go beyond that?
I think you can go beyond that because the agenda for today's discussion being the BBI, and you had talked about the referendum and public participation. Those are the questions that should be addressed in terms of why should we have this particular bill going through. And we are getting there. I'm very optimistic because if you look at the sweeteners, as someone would call them, particularly on the question of the youth, you've asked whether you have to know somebody, like when you have the youth fund, which talks about that the youth can be able to access some form of facility and be assisted. The issue that we talk about, the HELP Act 1995, which now helps the young people who are coming out from the universities such that they have a 4-year freeze of their loan, which they're supposed to pay to HELP. And after the 4 years, if they have not been able to get any meaningful employment, then the interest is also frozen. If you look at the question about the ombudsman, so that the people who may not be easily accessible to justice, because justice comes at a cost, can easily bring their complaints and also be able to check the excesses that may be happening on the judiciary. That is something that would help in dispensation of justice. And most importantly, the question about the Prompt Payment Bill 2020, because many other people who have supplied to government or they have offered goods and services, but when it comes to payment, you need to know somebody who knows somebody for you to be paid. But if these things, if they're enshrined in law and they actually have basis, and that hinge would actually be able to assist the mwananchi to be able to get the fruits of their labor, and most importantly be able to accord them an opportunity to live a decent life. And maybe as we move on, maybe we could even consider the issues, the fundamental issues that are happening with this particular instrument in terms of the executive, the judiciary, of government. If you look like the question of the judiciary, it changes a few things, like the qualifications of the CJ now. It's going to be increased from 15 years to 20 years. The question about the appellate court judges, they increase it to 15 years from 10 years. If you look the question of the JSC, it's going to be changed so that these people, the ombudsman, will also be sitting in the JSC, so that these checks and balances, if they really are to be harnessed and they are going to be implemented, they would be able to give the equilibrium that is desired for a society to live a decent life and for society to be guided by the rule of law.
All right, Peter, thank you for doing that, because it helps viewers understand more about some of these proposals contained in the BBI report. And, you know, going forward, in the next phase, I believe, like all of us agree, that is what should go on. You know, Kenyans are supposed to understand deeper what they are actually supporting or not supporting. And it takes a personal initiative as well. I'd just like to tell our viewer, it takes a personal initiative for you to do this, because a majority would depend on politicians to interpret and tell them what the BBI bill is all about. At a personal level, take time and read it, so that when you're making a decision, it's something that it is influenced by your own interest as a Kenyan. Unfortunately, we've run out of time for this conversation, and I'd just like to give you both a chance to give us your final remarks from, you know, what we've talked about going forward. What is it? I've said my own. I'd like to give you a chance to say your own. What is it that you'd like Kenyans to ponder over, to think about, even as we journey on in changing Kenya's constitution? Let me begin with you, Peter, and then Martin, you can conclude for us.
I thought my senior should have started.
That's okay.
But thank you for this opportunity. I wish to thank you for inviting me to this show. Moving forward, I think the question that now should arise is how the enaction of the Constitutional Amendment Bill 2020 is going to foster good governance in this republic. It's going to enhance the system of law, and most importantly, how the common mwananchi is going to be to be hinged in terms of access to the rule of law. Thank you.
All right, Martin.
It's an opportunity because the president is exiting, and we have. He says he has no interest, but he's a major player. So there, what should have actually, in an ideal situation, what should have happened is we should have had a national constitutional audit conference. But you see, we slept on the job because that time we were too busy focused on the electioneering of 2017. So we let that opportunity pass. But now we have a constitutional moment. So what we need to do is effect the changes that we want to effect. Then we look around and see what other changes can we look at the Constitution. I believe even after we have effected these changes, we can still carry out an audit so that we see which other clauses do we need to improve in the Constitution so that we improve on the state of governance. But by and large, the Constitution alone will not address all our issues. And some of the things that we have put in BBI, they're just administrative. Like what he's talking about, paying suppliers promptly. You don't need a law. Because if people have supplied, it is automatic. They need to be paid. Yeah, because you see, ultimately, it breaks the chain. And even once you break the chain, you saw like yesterday, I was watching your news here, there are circles. Money has been deducted. People have, you remit your money to they deduct your money for the circle, but they don't remit. So it becomes very difficult. Now, if you want to go and borrow a loan, the circle cannot give you money because it doesn't have money, yet your money has been deducted. So, those are basically administrative issues which don't need to be anchored in law. And, we are also over legislating because legislation per se will not address all our issues. So let's see, can we have political will? Can we improve the governance of this country without necessarily legislating on everything? But now we have a BBI moment. Let people be educated. Let the people vote. After they have voted, then how do we make the country a better country? In terms of the youth not having jobs, you don't fix it by letting them languish out there for 7 years. We need to create an enabling environment so that we even have an opportunity of importing manpower. You create a business environment, create jobs. The government must stop overborrowing because we have overborrowed. And we borrow, then we steal. Right. So we must reduce what we are borrowing so that there is enough money for the private sector because the government doesn't create jobs. Two, we are borrowing and spending so much money in recurrent expenditure. So we must, whatever we have borrowed, let us complete the projects which are there without starting new ones. Then now we put money also. And we also put quite a bit of money in infrastructure, which is good. But infrastructure alone will not grow the economy. We must be able to invest in sectors which are going to create wealth. So that infrastructure, you have good roads, but you must have the farmer in Muranga, you must have the fisherman in Homa Bay, we must have the farmer in Huisero producing enough food to take to the markets.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
So those are some of the things we need to look at.
Thank you so much, Martin Andati, for that. And of course, Peter Njage. Peter Njage is a legal expert. Martin Andati is a political analyst. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for creating time for us. As we were just unpacking what lies ahead on the road to changing Kenya's constitution a day after 38 counties passed this particular bill. Not a day after, actually so far since counties began debating on it. 38 counties have given the bill a nod, and we are yet to get information on how other counties are also going to be voting on this particular process. Now we want to pave way for the next conversation. We are going to be focusing on the education sector. We know that the COVID-19 pandemic taught us many lessons and transitioned our way of life. There are a lot of schools and learning institutions that transitioned into the online platform. How is this working? Have we invested in this as a country? And what can we do to better digital learning going forward? I will be having that conversation on the other side of the break. Do join me for that. My name is Serfine Achieng. Do stay with us.
On the next episode.
Kutoka Pwani.
Kuleta Huduma Center ilikuwa kitu kizuri kwa sababu unapata huduma zote under one roof.
Hadi katika milima ya kuvutia ya Taita Taveta.
Niko hapa Huduma Center hapa saa hii, nimeonyeshwa kila kitu na nimeshukuru. Siwezi kutafuta tiketi ya kwenda mpaka huko.
Na kuelekea hadi maeneo tambarare ya Maasai.
Mara nyingine nilikuwa naamka mapema niende kupanga laini, lakini hapa nimekuja ile masaa nimechukua almost 10 minutes.
It's a game changer. Imeleta serikali na mwananchi pamoja.
Tonight on KBC Channel 1.
Max is the love of my life. I can't wait for us to get married.
Let's see. What is this? The paternity test between father and son is...
Max?
Hello.
Who's there?
Good evening, ma'am. I'm Maximiliano Montesinos, and I need to speak with Madam Dolores. Is it you?
This weekend on KBC Channel 1.
Picha nini? If you like, take me to High Court, sue me, or take me to court of appeal.
Well, until everything comes back to normal, we just have to make do.
Teacher, that is unacceptable. This is not what we signed up for. This environment is worse than approved school.
You mean you still bruised over that mad incident? Grow up.
Well, did you have a mad fight?
I wish I could do that.
If you ask any man if he has gossiped before, he will answer with a loud vehement no.
Yes.
But of course we know that is not true. Men gossip.
Classmates, every Saturday on KBC.
Tonight on KBC Channel 1.
Max is the love of my life. I can't wait for us to get married.
Let's see. What is this? The paternity test between father and son is...
Max?
Hello.
Who's there?
Good evening, ma'am. I'm Maximiliano Montesinos, and I need to speak with Madam Dolores. Is it you?
On the next episode.
Kutoka Pwani.
Kuleta Huduma Center ilikuwa kitu kizuri kwa sababu unapata huduma zote under one roof.
Hadi katika milima ya kuvutia ya Taita Taveta.
Niko hapa Huduma Center hapa saa hii, nimeonyeshwa kila kitu na nimeshukuru. Siwezi kutafuta tiketi ya kwenda mpaka huko.
Na kuelekea hadi maeneo tambarare ya Maasai.
Mara nyingine nilikuwa naamka mapema niende kupanga laini, lakini hapa nimekuja ile masaa nimechukua almost 10 minutes.
It's a game changer. Imeleta serikali na mwananchi pamoja.
On the next episode of...
Nataka kwenda kwenu.
Ukiniacha naondoka.
Umesahau wewe nilikokutoa. Hebu nusha.
Hebu rudisha ile lingo lako huko.
Nzuri. Rangi ya chungwa.
Babu, basi kilichokuvutia kwangu ni nini?
Sina mimba.
Jamani, mume wangu utoke wapi?
Alafu ameona redio naye vile alikuwa ameanza kutangazia kijiji kizima.
back and thank you so much for staying with us. I told you we'll be switching gears and talking about matters education. In a bit, we'll be exploring how to enhance digital learning in the country. I'll be engaging Professor Washington Okeyo, the Vice Chancellor of Management University of Africa. But first, I want us to quickly follow up on some of the events that are happening today at Movenpick Hotel. The Office of the Data Protection Commissioner is marking 100 days. All right, we will be getting to that later. But right now, I just want us to also focus on some